Now we are going to create a new scene, which is going to be the trunk. So that is going to be used to build up the tree that we are going to punch. So again, I'm going to click here on scene, new scene, and I'm going to add a new node here, which is going to be of type node 2D. And I'm going to rename this to trunk. And here I'm going to add a new sprite. And the sprite for this trunk is going to be under the sprites folder down here, and it's going to be the trunk mid. So I'm going to just drag and drop it here under the texture, and again it's going to be at the origin of our scene. And now we are going to add two things here. One's going to be the right X and the other one is going to be the left side X. So I'm going to select the trunk here, Control A to add a new node, and this time we're going to be adding a different node, which is going to be an area 2D. So we can just search for it, type in area, and an area 2D, as the description already says, is used to detect basically if two things are overlapping each other, basically if we have a collision happening between two nodes. So I'm going to select the area here and click on create, and you see that it has a little triangle here with a exclamation mark on it, and it's going to say to us that this node has no children shapes, so it cannot interact with the space. Basically everything that detects collision, or if two areas are overlapping each other, needs to have some type of shape. The engine needs to know what is the shape of that collision. So we're going to select the area 2D now and press Ctrl A, and we're going to search for collision. And you see that under physics body 2D here, or actually under collision object 2D here, we'll have a collision shape 2D, and this is the one that we want. So I'm going to click on create, and now the collision shape 2D is asking for a shape for it. We have the node, but this node here needs a collision. So here under the shape in the spec inspector, we're going to click on this arrow right here, and I'm going to select a circle shape 2D, and I'm going to zoom in, and remember, this is the shape that we want for the X. So we don't really know what is the shape of the X yet, so we need to add a sprite to this area 2D. So I'm going to press Ctrl A, and then I'm going to search for the sprite, click on create, and I'm going to drag and drop this X iron here to the texture. So if I drag and drop it here, you'll see that now we have an X. Now what we want to do is make this shape reassembles the shape of the actual sprite. So I'm going to move the sprite up here, so we have the collision on top of the X, just to be easier for us to see. And I'm going to zoom in, and when you are dealing with collision shapes, you should never touch these handles right here. It's going to mess up all of your collision and it's not going to work properly. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z, and what we want to do is actually use this handle right here, the handle that is inside of the actual shape. And this is the one that you should use to change the size and the portions of your collision shape. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to just increase it, and we can have something that is hopefully the size of our X. And we don't have to worry about having a perfect collision shape, because all we want to do is check if the player is touching the X, and if it is, we're going to restart the game, or tell the player that he has died. But in different cases we can use different collision shapes, so we can have even a polygon shape collision that is going to reassemble perfectly the shape of the X. But for this use case right now, we don't really need that, so we're going to use a circle collision shape. And I'm going to rename this to be left X, and I'm going to click on this button right here again, so we don't move the children but the actual left X itself. So I'm going to click on it and hold shift, so I can only move it on the X axis, and I'm going to place it around here. And now what I need is a new X, which is going to be the right side X. Here on the left X, I'm going to go to its position and see here on the transform and the position we see that we are at minus 82.3. So I'm just going to set it to minus 80. So we have a whole number here. I'm going to duplicate this x, and I'm going to press here to rename it. I'm going to name it right x. And here on the position, I'm going to set it to 80. So we are basically at the same position, but on the other side, because remember, this is the origin, so this is the point 0 of our scene. Anything for this side is going to be minus, and anything that is to the right of this line right here is going to be greater than 0. And to flip our x, we have two solutions. We could either select the right x, and here on the scale, we could set the x scale to be -1, and this is going to flip it. Or we could just set it back to 1, and on our sprite, we could go to the offset right here and flip h, which is going to flip it horizontally. And now we get the same result. Either way is fine. For now, I'm going to leave this as is. But you'll see that right now our x is actually on top of our sprite. And again, we have two ways that we can fix this. We could select our sprite right here, clicking on the icon, and just put it down here, and this would fix it. And what we could also do is, if I press Ctrl Z to bring it back to where it was before, is here on the sprite you see that we have the Z and index. And the Z index is basically in what position it is based on the different sprites that it has. So it's basically what is on top of what. And the greater the value, the more on top you are, and the lesser the value, the more to the back you are. So I'm going to set the sprite to be at the Z index 1, and you see that now it is on top of the other axis, even though it is on the tree, it is on top of them. So now I can save this, and I'm going to save this as trunk. And if I go to the game here, and you don't have to do this, I'm just going to do it to give you a brief example of how our game is going to look like. Here I have to select the game node, click here, trunk, and you'll see that now the trunk is really small. And to fix that, we have to go to the trunk, select it, and set its scale to be 2 on the X and on the Y. I'm going to save this, go back to the game, and now it is really big. I'm going to turn on snapping just for now. I'm going to place it here, hopefully in the middle of the game scene, and I'm going to duplicate it a few times so we can actually see how the tree is going to look like. And right now the player is not going to die because we haven't added that functionality already. And if I rerun the game, you'll see that now we have the player and a bunch of axes and a tree.